Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. I almost forgot what day it was then, but it is indeed Wednesday, and we have a second puzzle on the channel for you by Tall Cat, who made their debut just recently. This puzzle is called Four Corners, and, well, people have been describing this as a work of genius. Now, I know that we do a lot of puzzles that seem to attract that sort of level of praise, but I gather this one is a bit special, so do have a go at it. Do try and find the time, and I'll read you the rules in just a second. Some news before that. Firstly, we released a bonus video this morning by Peter Venus, in which he explains how he constructed his Miracle Square Sudoku. So if you have any interest in how these brilliant constructors make these incredible puzzles, check out the video. Now tomorrow we've got a bit more bonus content as well. We're releasing the second ever episode of the Cracking the Cryptic podcast. Now Mark and I are still to be convinced that there is really an audience for a podcast that talks about Sudokus, but you can convince us. That'll go live 10 a.m. tomorrow UK time on the channel, and then thereafter we'll release it on things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts or whatever it's called, so it will be available in other forms too. So leave some feedback, let us know if you like it. Other than that, our Arrow Sudoku app is some of the feedback we've been getting has been it's warmed our hearts, let's put it like that. It's very deeply satisfying to work on something for such a long time, and when we finally do release it, people enjoy it. And yeah, some of the comments have been just terrific, so thank you so much if you've taken the time to write to us or tweet about it to us. We've been overjoyed, really. So that's that. Now, a couple of days ago, I should have said happy birthday to Rods Monteroso. Sorry, Rods. I'm putting that right now. I hope you had a great birthday, and sorry I forgot. Other than that, our book is with the printers. So if you did order the book, it's really is very close now. It's tremendously exciting. It's been through proofreading like you would not believe. We have made so much effort to make it absolutely everything that you hoped it would be, and we hoped it would be, and it looks incredible. And yeah, we're so proud of it. So that you should be seeing that very, very soon. Other than that, I've got nothing else to tell you, so let me read you the rules of Tall Cat's puzzle. Here we go. Normal Sudoku rules apply. Good. Digits along an arrow must sum to the digit in that arrow's circle. Well, that's standard arrow rules then. So what that means is that to get this digit here, you just sum those three squares and put it in that square, and then we're good to go. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue in the top left corner of the cage. I guess there's nothing here about digits not being able to repeat within a cage, because look, all of the cages in the puzzle seem to be entirely contained within a single box of the Sudoku, so we don't need the rule about no repeating digits, because normal Sudoku rules takes care of that. And each main diagonal marked in blue cannot contain a repeated digit, so that means that, let's look at this diagonal. This diagonal has to contain all of the digits 1 to 9 exactly once each. And so, by the way, does this one. And that's all there is to it, apparently. It's that easy. Hope you've nearly finished. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. I've not been given any information at all about how difficult this one is today, so you'll be able to judge by the length of the video, probably, whether this is monstrously hard or not. Right, I can actually see something straight away, which is really quite interesting. So let me talk about that. I think a couple of years ago, if this sort of pattern had come up, it would have probably taken 10 minutes of the video for me to spot how these circles interact. But here, I don't know, it must be practice, but I can see immediately two things about these four circles. The first thing is very simple, and it's because I do far too much Arrow Sudoku. But you can see that each of these circles has a 3-cell arrow emanating from it. Now, none of these arrows can contain a repeated digit because they don't go outside the box. So the minimum we could put onto any of these arrows individually would be a 1, a 2 and a 3. Now 1 plus 2 plus 3 is a knowledge bomb, add up to 6. Okay, so each of these arrows has to be at least equal to 6. But we can go much further than that, because each of these arrows, each of the circles I should say, sees the other 3. So let's look at this square. This square, through the madness of Sudoku, sees that square and that square, just that's in its column, that's in its row. But through the diagonal, it sees this square as well. So this square must be not the same as these 3 squares. But that logic applies symmetrically to every single one of these circles. Let's look at this one. Well, that can't be the same as the other, that one, or that one. So these are a very strange 6, 7, 8, 9 quadruple. And therefore, yes, you've guessed it, I'm going to colour them in. If I put them in different colours, I might remember they've all got to be different. That's 4 corners, of course. That's the title of the puzzle as well. So that's presumably a hint that this is what we need to think about. Right, now look at that cell. Now this is in a 2-cell 13 cage, so this has to at least equal 4, because if it was only 3, this square would have to be a 10. But it can't be 6, 7, 8, and 9, because it sees all 4 colours. So that square can only be 4 or 5, which means that square's 8 or 9, which... Right, the 12 cage is limited below it now, because if this 12 cage was 4 or 8, you couldn't fill this 13 cage anymore, because 4, 9 and 5, 8 would be impossible. So this is not a 4, 8, 12 cage, so it's a 3, 9 or a 5, 7, 12 cage. Oh, well, that's putting a little bit of pressure on the 8 cage, therefore, because the 8 cage now can't be 3, 5, or this 12 cage is broken and would have no options. So the 8 cage up there is 2, 6 or 1, 7. And this is right, this is lovely, isn't it? So now this 9 cage can't be 2, 7, because if it is, you can't fill the 8 cage with a valid combination. So the 9 cage is either... the 9 cage has got lots of options left, actually. It's either 1, 8, 3, 6 or 4, 5, and it seems like all of those are possible, probably. Maybe the 13 cage down here. So what were the options here? 3, 9 or 5, 7. So this... No, even if that's 5, 7, that can still be 4, 9. So... so I think I'm running out of... I'm running out of ideas now. My phone is buzzing at me. How inconvenient. No. Okay, so this is a dead end, I think. Right, so let's have a look at row 6. Right, there's something I know about a 5 and an 8 cage together, and that thing is that there must be a 1 in one of these 4 squares. Because if there isn't, this would be a 2, 3, 4, 5 as a minimum, and 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 add up to 14, which is too many. So there's definitely a 1 in one of these cages. Ah, no. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Simon. Sorry. I am a complete numpty. Right. Let us go back several steps in our thinking to when I coloured in these, because that should have got me thinking far harder about these arrows. Oh, good grief. Right. Well, actually, to be fair to me, this square not being able to be a 1 is quite interesting. No, there's all sorts going on. My head is buzzing now. My head is buzzing because these arrows are at least interesting and possibly the most powerful things in the known universe, because 3 of these arrows at least have to have 1 on them. And that's because, maybe it's easier if I just fill some of them in. I don't know what the order of the arrows is, obviously. I just fill them in 6, 7, 8, 9. But let's think about what's on these arrows. The 6 arrow is 1, 2, 3. So it's definitely got a 1 on it. Oopsie, I meant to do that. Definitely got a 1 on it. The 7 arrow is 1, 2, 4. It's definitely got a 1 on it. The 8 arrow is either 1, 2, 5 or 1, 3, 4. Either way, it's got a 1 on it. The 9 arrow might have a 1 on it or might not. Let's wonder what would happen if the 9 arrow has a 1 on it. What would this mean for the puzzle? And the key is the diagonals, because now we have the key is to realise these arrows here never ever see the diagonals. And if they never see the diagonals and there's 1s in all 4 corner boxes, where are we putting the 1 on this diagonal? And the answer is in one of those 3 squares. And where are we putting the 1 on this diagonal? And the answer is in one of these 3 squares. 1, 2, 3. Now the only square that meets both of those criteria is this square, which cannot be a 1 because it's in a 13 cage. So let's come back to the 9 arrow. Is it possible this 9 arrow has a 1 on it and there are 4 1s in these corner boxes off the diagonals? No, it's not. And if the 9 arrow cannot have a 1 on it, it must be 2, 3... Whoa. The 9 arrow must be 2, 3 and 4. Now, I suspect... Yeah, this is actually incredibly... I've done a puzzle that had this sort of thought in it recently. I know I have. Was it by the other cat? Was it by Mr. Totally Normal Cat? The cat with the most inappropriate pseudonym, because Totally Normal Cat is sort of Leonardo da Vinci of the Sudoku world. But I'm sure I did a puzzle by Totally Normal Cat where I had to count 1s, 2s, 3s and 4s on arrows. And this is exactly what we're going to have to do here. Because this is beautiful. It's beautiful. Let's carry on with our hypothesized disposition of 6, 7s, 8s and 9s. Now we now know the 9 arrow is definitely 2, 3, 4. We know the 6 arrow is 1, 2, 3, and we know the 7 arrow is 1, 2, 4. These are things we know. Now, what do we therefore know about how many 2s are appearing in the 6, the 7 and the 9 arrow? The answer is there are 3 2s. Now let's come back to the 8 arrow and imagine if the 8 arrow was 1, 2, 5. What would this tell us about the state of the universe? Well, again, now I can't put 2s in any of these squares. So I have to put 2 exactly there in order to meet the criteria that 2 has to appear on this diagonal and on this diagonal, but this cannot be a 2. So the 1, 2, 5 arrow, well, the 8 arrow can't be 1, 2, 5 and must be 1, 3, 4. And I was about to say that this is Bobbinsworthy, this central square. This central square is extremely irritating because now we can count the digits on these arrows. It's just extraordinary. You have got, in those 12 squares, you've got exactly 3 1s, exactly 3 2s, exactly 3 3s, and exactly 3 4s. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that either this diagonal here, let's look at the 2 opposing arrows. Obviously, we don't know what is in these 2 circles, but we know either. Let's think about the digit 3, just to take one of those 3 digits. One of those 4 digits, sorry. So we're thinking about the digits 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's pick the digit 3 and think about what we know about the digit 3. We know that the digit 3 is definitely appearing on exactly, in fact this example shows it, it's appearing on exactly 3 arrows. We don't know which ones yet, but what we can say with certainty is that it must appear in opposite positions either on this diagonal or on this diagonal. When I say opposite positions, I mean it must appear in box 1 and box 9, or it must appear in box 3 and box 7 on an arrow. Because given there are 3 3s, there's no way of putting, of hiding the 3s away from both diagonals. So you're either going to have 3s here and 3s here, or you're going to have 3s here and 3s here. One of those two things must be true, which means that the digit 3 must appear in one of those 5 cells in the central box, because it must appear on a diagonal in the central box, because whichever, you can see in this particular example, because the 3s are locked into boxes 1 and 9, the 3 has to be in one of those 3 positions, and therefore in fact in one of these 2 positions. Now the same is obviously true, identical logic for the 1, because there are 3 1s that we have to place on arrows. Those in the instance of 1s, you can see the one in this particular disposition where the 7 and the 8 are opposite each other on the diagonal. The 1 would have to be in one of those 3 squares, and it would therefore have to be in one of these 2 squares. So the digits 1, 2, 3, and 4 have to occupy 4 of those 5 positions. Now, if this hadn't had the option of being 4, we would know that that would be a 1, 2, 3, 4 quadruple. But because this can be a 4, that is blown open and not true. So all I think we know at the moment is that because 1 has to appear in one of those 4 squares, and 1 has to appear in one of these 5 squares, 1 is in one of those 2 squares. Which means this, I'm going to get rid of those 1's pencil marks, that'll confuse me, but that means that this 8 arrow is either 2, 6 or 3, 5. And that's right, we can do better than this though, because we also know that 2s and 3s are interesting in this, because 2s and 3s have to appear in 2 of those 4 squares. So is it possible that this is a 2-3 pair? The answer is clearly not. We know one of these squares is a 1, so these are not a 2-3 pair. You can't put 2 and 3 in that square, so you must put 2 or 3, or both, I suppose, in one of those squares. Now, if one of these 2 squares is a 2 or a 3, what's that 5 cage? Well, one thing it's not is a 2-3 pair. Now, if it's not a 2-3 pair, it's a 1-4 pair. Which means 1 is in one of those 3 squares. It means, look, now 1 is not in this domino. So this is a 2, 3, 5, 6. And that means we've got a 2, 3, 5, 6 quadruple in box 6 in the 8 cages. Right. Oh, this is extraordinarily clever. This is it. I've got it. I've finished it. Well, maybe not the whole puzzle, but I think this square is a 4. Let me explain why. We know we've got to put 2 and 3 in this central box, and we know the 2 and the 3 have to be in 2 of these 4 cells. They're the only ones available that are going to work. Now, can we put 2 and 3 in those squares? No, because that's going to break this 8 cage. If we put 2 and 3 there, we then don't have the option of putting 1, 2 or 3 in the 8 cage. And one thing we cannot do in the 8 cage is do double 4. So this breaks the 8 cage if this is a 2-3 pair. If this is not a 2-3 pair, what are those squares? Well, one of them is a 1, the other will have to be a 2 or a 3. So these squares are made up of 1, 2 and 3. But let's go back to thinking about 4. 4 we know will be in opposite boxes either in box 3 and box 7 or in box 1 and box 9. So 4 is going to have to appear in one of those 5 squares. Well, there's a 4 here. So it's not those squares. We've just worked out it can't be those squares because these two have to be 1, 2 and 3. That's a 4. That's a 9. QED. This is a 4 by Sudoku. Oh, I tell you what I better be careful about though here. And that's relying in... I was about to start getting rid of this pencil mark, but that would be a complete nonsense because I do not know what goes in any of these corner boxes with any specificity, that word. So let's get rid of all of this and go back to the... yeah, go back to this position. Do I know anything more profound about the world now then? I know that this 9 is ruling out a 9 from those squares. So this is now not 4, 8 or 3, 9. That's 5, 7, which means I know the 13 cage is 4, 9 because it's not 5, 8 or 6, 7. So I now look, I've got 4s and 9s in those squares. So there's 4s and 9s in 2 of these 3 squares in box 2. 5, 7 here is removing the 1, 7 option from the 8 cage. Whoopsie. So this is a 2, 6, 8 cage. Right, and that's putting pressure on the 9 cage, which is not 2, 7 or 3, 6 or 4, 5. It's 1, 8. That is rather interesting because now this square can't be a 1, and if this square can't be a 1, where does the 1 go in the central box? We knew it was in one of those 2 squares. It now can only be here. Right, and this is where it's starting to get even more interesting because we know that 3 of the arrows around the grid have 1s on them. We now know that those arrows cannot both contain 1s because if they do, where's the 1 going on this diagonal now? It would have to go in one of those 3 squares where it cannot go. So that means that if you cannot put 1s on both of these arrows, you must put 1s on both of those arrows because we know 3 of the arrows in the grid have to have 1s on them. And now, this is just absolutely beautiful because now, if you know 1 is not on these arrows, is on these arrows, what number is not in the circle of either of these circles? It's not 9 because 9 is 2, 3, 4. So now 9 is in one of those 2 squares. So one of these arrows is 2, 3, 4. Do we know which one? I don't know actually. Now look, I've got a virtual 2, 3 pair in row 4 because whatever this is, if this was a 2, this square here, this would have to be 3, 5. And if this is a 3, this would have to be 2, 6. So there's always a 2 and a 3 in 2 of these 3 squares. It's got to be a 7 and an 8 in this row in those squares. So the 9 arrow now is not 1, 8, 2, 7. The 9 arrow is not 1, 8, 2, 7 or 4, 5. That's 3, 6, I think. Which is not actually that useful because it's not. We don't know enough about how this 2, 3, 5, 6 quad unwinds to know how that fixes itself. 6 is on the diagonal in the central box. This 6 here is ruling a 6 out of here. So this is not 2, 6. This is 3, 5. Therefore, that must be 2, 6. Look, and that's giving us this square is a 3. No, that we've now... I was about to write a 3 in here. Don't do that. That would be a mistake. We've got 6 digits in this column. Look, we still need 1s. 6 digits in this column. We need 1, 3, and 8 to finish this column. Well, that square can't be 1 or 8. That's 3. That square can't be 1. So it's 8, and that square's a 1. And now we might be able to make more progress, maybe. 1's 4's 3's 5. One of those two squares is a 5. Oh, in fact, these 3 squares, look, are now 5, 7, and 8. Whoopsie. These squares are 2 and 9, I think. Oh, but hang on. What do you need to have in these 2 squares? You've got to have a 2 in one of them, because there are 3 2's on arrows. Yes, so we knew one of these squares was going to be a 2. Once we got there was a 6 in one of them, we could have immediately written in 2, 6. I just didn't think about it. So that square's now a 9. This square's a 2. These squares are 5 and 7 to complete the box. This square's now known, and that's a 7, I think. These squares are something. They are 1s, 8s, and 9s. Which might be important. This column now has got a lot of things in it. Still need to place... Oh, we need to place 2, 6, 5, 7. Right, so that's a 5 or a 7, which gives a 5, 7 pair, so this must be 2 or 6. Right, okay, so that's... Oh, we don't know what this is. It depends what that is. Right, so now we're stuck. So we have to figure something out. And that thing is going to be what? We've got 1 here. We've got 3 here. Have I used this 3? No, I've not. No. Right, so once this is a 3... we have to think about the disposition of 3's on the arrows round the corner boxes. And what we cannot have now is 3's in both of these, on both of these arrows, because that would mean the 3 on this diagonal would have to go in one of those 3 squares where it doesn't go. Now, if you can't put 3 on both of those arrows, and we've got to put 3 3's on the arrows, that means there's definitely a 3 on this arrow, there's definitely a 3 on that arrow. That's not a 3 by Sudoku. Now what you can't do is put 7 in either of these arrows, because once you know an arrow has a 3 on it, you know it's not 7, because 7 is 1, 2, 4. So that's not 7. That's not 7. And we're whittling away these arrows now. 1's, 3's. 3's on that arrow as well. And that's it. Look, 3 is now locked onto this arrow, and therefore this arrow can't be 1, 2, 4 because it's definitely got 3 on it. If that arrow can't be 7, and it can't be, and these two cannot be 7, the only one left that can be 7 is hiding in the bottom left corner of the grid. This is a 7, that's a 7, this is a 5. You can't put 7 on this arrow, and you can't put 7 here, so that's a 7. You can't put 7 on this arrow, or on the diagonal, that's a 7. This is a 5, this is a 7, this is a 5. Now, can we get 7 in this box? You can't put... Well, the simple question actually is, where does 7 go on that diagonal? You can see it's locked off the diagonal in these two boxes. So it's got to be on the diagonal in this box. It's not in the corner. And it's not here by Sudoku, so it's there. Which I think means 7's got to go there. And 7's got to go here. And we've suddenly, out of nowhere, we have done all the 7's. This is now a 4-9 pair, I think. We still haven't disambiguated these though. So these are a 6-8-9 triple now. We know this one has a 3 on it. Oh, but that's completely normal. 3 of the circles have 3s on them, and we now know which they are. But this 7 arrow is giving us a 1-2-4 triple here. So that's going to be almost awesome. Almost awesome. This is a 1-2-4 triple. This is a 4-9 pair. So the 4 in row 7 is in none of those squares. It's not here, and it's not here by the virtue of the diagonals already having a 4 on it. So this square is a 4, I think. Which means this arrow is not a 6 anymore. This is now 8 or 9. It means those two squares are either 1-3. If this is an 8, this is a 1-3 pair. If it's a 9, it's a 2-3 pair. Which is almost good. Or is it? Oh no, got it. Got it. Got it. Look at the 4s. Where does 4 go in box 3? 4-4 can't go here because there's a 4 on the diagonal. So 4 is on this diagonal. My phone is going nuts. Be quiet, phone. There's a 4 on this arrow. Now, if there's a 4 on this arrow, and there's a 3 on this arrow, and there's a 1 on this arrow, you don't have to be Leonardo da Vinci to work out that this arrow adds up to 8. It's 1, 3, and 4 in some order. That's not 4. This square is an 8. This square is a 9, therefore, and that square's a 6, and the 4 corners are resolved. The 6 is resolving the 6 and the 2. And this is absolutely mammoth for the puzzle, you know, because now that square's a 1 because it sees 8 and 9. But more important than that, we now know these are a 2-3 pair because we know the 9 arrow is 2-3-4. Therefore, that's not a 2. Okay, I thought that might go a bit further. Let's check the other arrow. The 6 arrow is 1, 2, 3 now. So those squares have got to be 1, 2, and 3. We know that one's not 3. We know this one isn't 2. And do we know anything else? The answer is maybe, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So what we've got to do is try and spot something else. I'm not sure if there's going to be a quick way of doing that, or whether we're going to have to sort of do Sudoku. No, not Sudoku. I don't want to do that. I want to solve it all using the geometry of the grid. Can I get any further with the geometry of the grid? There's a 3 in one of those, so that square's not a 3. No, that's not good enough, is it? Here's something. 1 and 1. So on this diagonal, I've not put a 1. And it can't go there. That square is a 1. But just looking at this diagonal where 1 can go. That might be nice. That gets me a 4 here. And a 1, 2 pair. This 4 is giving me a 4 and a 9. Straight away. There's definitely a 9 in one of these two squares now. The 1 is also getting me a 3 up here, which is giving me a 1, 4 pair there. Doesn't look like it's... Oh no, it is. This is nice. So now we can ask the question, where does 1 go in row 3 of the grid? It's not in those squares, it's not in those squares, so it must be in one of these 3 squares, but we also know it's on the 6 arrow, so it's actually exactly there. That's a 3, that's a 2. That's a 1, that's a 4. That's a 1, that's a 2. Oh, I thought that was going to go even further, but no, it's not. Can we? Yes, we can. Look. Oh, no, it's really simple. Sorry. I'm really sorry. But look, I was about to prove where 2 can go using the mystery of the fact it's not being on this diagonal yet. But the very simple way of doing it is to go, there's a 6 in the corner, so that can't be a 6. That's a 2. That's a 6. That must be a 2. Oh, that's done virtually nothing, actually. So perhaps what we do now is we check the diagonals for what we're missing. This one needs 5 and 8. Well, that can't be a 5, so that's an 8. That's a 5. Which doesn't seem to have done anything. 5 is in one of those 2 squares by Sudoku, so 5's in one of those 2 squares. So let's check the other diagonal. We need 2, 3, and 5 and 9. Oh, okay. So 2. There's a 2 in one of those squares, and yeah, there we go, it's there. That gives us the 2 and the 6. It gives us the 2 and the 3. These squares now are almost known, aren't they? They've got to be 3, 6 and 8, which doesn't seem to be resolved. And these squares, well, those squares are a 6, 8 pair, so this is a 3. And let's come back to this diagonal again, where I still need to put 3, 5 and 8 in. And there's, oh no, not 8, 3, 5 and 9. 3, 5 and 9. So that square is a 5 or a 9. I feel sure this is resolved, I'm just not seeing how. This square is a 3 or a 9. And this square is a 5 or a 9. Okay, so where does 3 go on this diagonal? That would be the question I should have asked. That fixes the 3 and the 6, look. If we zoom up this column, we've not put a 5 in it yet. These 2 squares are 4 and 9, which we can now do. It's amazing how much quicker you'd be if you pick the right digit to focus on immediately. 4, 1, 1, 8. This 9 is now fixing that, which is in turn fixing this. This box needs 5 and 6, which we should be able to do. That fixes the 5 and the 3. This 9 and 8 is fixed. That 8 and 6 is fixed. This is an 8 or a 6. You can see it can't be a 6, so it must be an 8. That's going to do everything. This is just a wondrous puzzle. It really is. That is an absolutely wondrous puzzle. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Good grief. Toolcat, take a bow. That was going to be a very deep bow given your stupendous size, but I mean, I'm a bit lost for words. I mean, it's so clever. It's so clever the way you have to count these arrows. And, well, it completely misled me, to be honest. I thought we were going to be doing stuff with these killer cages. And it was only actually the fact that I knew there was a 1 in one of these squares that got me thinking about where 1 went in the central box that finally triggered my brain to think, well, hang on a minute. There are going to be lots of 1s on the arrows. And that was the key to make me realise actually what we're doing is we're counting digits on these arrows and the fact that they can't be on the diagonals. And it's just brilliantly constructed after that. It is just brilliant. The fact that there's equal numbers of these digits, so you have to put 1, 2, 3 and 4 in those cells. It's stupendous. It's really, really stunning. And yeah, the way it resolves from there is elegance personified. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it. I really hope you did. If you enjoyed it a scintilla as much as I did, you will be in for a very, very happy evening. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.